Hello everybody, this is Chuck Carnevale, co-founder of FastGraphs, the Fundamentals Analyzer software tool. And today it's my pleasure to present another preview of our forthcoming FastGraphs Value U Academy curriculum videos. You know, one of the most often questions I receive from subscribers to FastGraphs is why are our PE ratios different than what they see on Yahoo, for example, or some other financial website? And the answer is always the same. It's because they're looking at a different metric. Yahoo will often report PE ratios based on GAAP earnings, or what we also call diluted earnings. FastGraphs offers those. We typically are using operating earnings, which are more reflective of the business, and we'll show you some insights into what I mean by that in a few moments. Another thing that can be different is some companies use trailing 12 months. And I have a video out on blended PE ratio. We use a blended PE ratio that'll help you understand that better. Others will use forward earnings or earnings that haven't happened yet. So we try to get a more accurate version by using this blended approach. But the real key is there's at least 4 earnings metrics on FastGraphs as well as some cash flow metrics that we'll cover in a different video. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill Kay here, and he's going to go through the different metrics, show you how they're different and how the adjustments are made from the financial statement. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Chuck. We're going to look at earnings correlations. And there's a drop-down menu in FastGraphs, and you can see there's 9 different earnings correlations. And what we're going to do is look at the first 4. We're going to look at adjusted operating earnings, owner's earnings, basic earnings, and diluted GAAP earnings. Why 4? And 4 different numbers. Well, when I pulled these out of FastGraphs for the Microsoft Corporation, and I looked at it as of their fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, the adjusted operating earnings was 576. The owner's earnings go up to 686. Basic earnings, 582. And diluted GAAP earnings of 576. How do we get these 4 different numbers? That's what we're going to look at. Microsoft earnings range from $5.76 up to $6.86. Why 4 different types of earnings? So I'm going to start with the last 2 and kind of work our way up. Why am I starting with those? Because those 2 are really given to us at the bottom of the income statement in the annual report. Those are the way we look at it in GAAP, basic earnings and diluted earnings. And in note 2, the footnote behind the financial statements, Microsoft tells us basic earnings per share is a weighted average number of common stock outstanding during the last 12 months fiscal year. The dilutive or diluted earnings per share includes outstanding stock options and stock awards. So what we do, we look at the bottom line, net income, and we divide it by basic shares, and then we can increase that number by 73 million. So we showed 7,610,000,000, and we would divide that into 44,281,000,000 to get basic. The diluted earnings per share includes the stock options that could be exercised. That would increase the number of shares outstanding to 7,683,000,000. That would reduce the earnings from 582 down to 576. So those are the 2 that are given to us at the bottom of the income statement. Basic earnings per share, diluted earnings per share. And we can see that in FastGraphs. When we look at the income statement, we're going to work our way down from top line to bottom line. You can see the revenue for the last 12 months was 143 billion plus. And to generate that amount of sales revenue, we had cost and we also had expenses. So we match in accrual accounting the cost of the revenue for products and services. That's 46 billion plus. Take that off and we get our gross margin, 96 $6,937,000,000. Then we have to take off our operating expenses. Research and development, sales and marketing, general and administrative, another $43,978,000,000. That brings our operating income, or EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, $52,959,000,000. Below that number are the other things. The I for interest expense, the T for taxes. Take those off, do the adjustments, and then you go from 52,959 down to net bottom line of 44,281. As we said, we divide that by basic shares outstanding and diluted shares outstanding, and that's how we get the 582 basic and 576 diluted. So those are the 3 and 4 in fast graphs. We can look at these. So we'll work our way up to 2 and 1 next. So to see this in fast graphs, here's the basic. We can see the trend line. And we look at it, a black line as of the end of the fiscal year. That's the 582 at 15 times PE. And Chuck and Nathan will be talking more about PE as we move forward. We come up with a value of 87.30 on that day, that point in time. It's one way to look at the value of Microsoft. Basic earnings per share. Next, we can look at it as diluted earnings per share. 576. That's a value of 86.40 for Microsoft. All right, next, to look at the other two, we have to get into the cash flow statement for Microsoft. The cash flow statement to me is a very important statement. We're taking accrual, our bottom line, that 44,281, and we're doing some adjustments to it. And this is what Warren Buffett likes to do. He says, I'm going to adjust that number, come up with owner's earnings. That's the way he likes to look at it. And owner's earnings per share. So what adjustments? Well, number one, we take off in the income statement depreciation and amortization as our equipment gets older. But that's only an accounting transaction. We're really not writing a check for it. So to come back to cash flow, we always add back the depreciation and amortization we took off and didn't spend. So there's $12,796,000,000 we really have. So we're going to add that back. Then we look at the other non-cash charges plus or minus. When we do these adjustments, you'll see net cash from operations for Microsoft, $60,675,000,000. Now they did spend part of that money investing in capital expenditures, additions to property and equipment. That's at the very bottom. There's $15,441,000,000 that went out for investing in CapEx. So Warren Buffett likes owner's earnings. He takes that bottom line from the income statement, that accrual number, adds back depreciation and amortization we still have to come back to closer to cash flow, looks at any pluses or minus in other non-cash charges, and takes off the maintenance for the capital expenditure. And that's the number he likes, owner's earnings. 44,281 plus the depreciation, 12,796, plus the other non-cash charges, 11,069, minus CapEx. And I came up with $52,705,000,000 in owner's earnings. Now we are going to divide that by the number of diluted shares outstanding to come up with the owner's earnings. So we can see this in fast graphs, owner's earnings, $6.86. We don't have any estimates on the right side of that. There's the trend line in owner's earnings, which looks like a nice trend line over the last 10 years. So on the far right, the 686 would give us a value of $102.90. So this is Warren's preferred formula for valuing companies. He He takes the bottom line, adds back D&A, does the adjustments plus or minus for other non-cash charges, takes off maintenance for CapEx, and comes up with his owner's earnings. That's what we just saw. Divides that by diluted shares outstanding, 686. Number 2, we can see in fast graphs. The last one, the top, the default, is the adjusted. And this is what we come up with in fast graphs for adjusted operating earnings. It was 576. At 15, we can see the trend line. There's a nice smooth trend line there for adjusted earnings per share. And that's what we try to do in accounting, smooth things out. So 576 times 15, we would say the value is 8640 as a default in fast graphs. Default metric for fast graphs. We're looking at reported earnings instead of GAAP earnings. And we do those adjustments for one-time charge-offs, just like Warren Buffett, and things that do not represent normal operation of the business. We take those off. So I came up with 44,254,000,000 divided by the number of diluted shares outstanding. You get the 576 reported earnings per share. So we've got these adjusted operating earnings, 576, owner's earnings, 686, basic earnings, 582, and diluted earnings, 576. We got 4 different values for Microsoft at a 15 PE. What's correct? Well, as Chuck says, we have to look at all of them. And on the next video, we're going to look at cash flow earnings and intrinsic earnings. Chuck, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Bill. That was excellent. Now, I want to just kind of reiterate or just expand a little bit on what Bill said about what are the best metrics to use. We offer all these metrics. We offer these 4 earnings metrics and several cash flow metrics, including metrics on things like EBITDA and EBIT. And again, one of the other common questions I always get from subscribers is, what's the best metric to use to value a business? So like Bill said, my answer is always all of them, because there's different perspectives that you get on looking at a stock through all the lenses of these different earnings metrics, as well as these lenses of these different cash flow metrics. So the point is, it's so easy and quick to do it with fast graphs that my answer is always look at all the metrics. They give you a different perspective of what the company's all about, what its operating results look like, how well it's managed. And so, we'll be covering this in a lot more detail in future videos. But our next video, Bill's going to go and cover now the cash flow metrics that he alluded to in this first part. So tune in to our next video. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see here, don't forget to subscribe and hit our subscribe button, ring the bell, and give us a like. We appreciate it. Thanks.